Now, first off, be certain that you get the years down as well, as once the war comes to an end, we are going to have to figure out how we move forward. From 1865, when the war comes to an end, all the way through 1877, we're going to be engaged in what's called the Reconstruction era. Now, I want you to keep in mind, how long did the war itself last? 4 years. Trying to rebuild and reconnect the country is going to take 3 times longer than the war itself. Now, Reconstruction has a couple of different meanings. First off, when we're talking about Reconstruction, there is the more physical meaning of this, in that we now have to quite literally rebuild the South. Now, I need to ask, why do we have to honestly, physically rebuild the South? What has happened to it? What's happened? Diana, what's happened to it? It's been destroyed. Sherman was given free rein to do whatever he wants to crush the South. He burns crop fields, homes, churches, destroys the railroad networks. Everything is crushed. Now, if we're going to bring the South back to the Union, we need to physically rebuild what was destroyed. But there's also more of a metaphorical reasoning behind this. We need to more metaphorically reconstruct the country. Now that the war has come to an end, we need the southern states back in the Union. The problem with this is, these southern states don't necessarily want to come back to the Union. They've lost the war. They can't keep fighting. But how are we going to be a united nation again going forward? This is a real difficult spot in which to be. So what we're going to see is 3 big plans emerge into how we should go about reconstructing the country. Now, we were talking last time, and you've been talking today at the beginning of the class about how we go about doing this. So first off, we had 2 generals trying to come up with a plan for how to reconstruct the country. What do Lee and Grant say is step 1? What do they do? Just forgive and forget. But the political problem extends where we have a president that says, not so fast. I have the power to end this war. We're going to have one plan come from Lincoln. Now, I don't want to spoil the surprise, but guess who else has a plan? The Senate and Congress, they have a plan as well. Today, we're just going to talk about one of these plans. We're going to talk about what Lincoln has proposed to bring about the end of the war and to bring the South back into the Union. Now, in order to kind of understand Lincoln's plan, you have to understand something about him. He has suffered during this war maybe more than anyone. He lost one of his sons in the war. His wife will never forgive him, and she is simply just distraught. Lincoln's decisions sent one of their sons to die. He made the choice to put his son's unit in harm's way. He just wants the war over. He wants the South back. Because what did Lincoln always say about those southern states? You didn't succeed. You're just bad. It's his job to defend and protect the Union. And he always says, these states never left. They're just bad. Which means his plan is very, very lenient on the southern states. Now let me ask you this. Who might be a little bit angry that his plan is so lenient on the South? Might reject that. What do you think? What do you think? Grant's gonna hate it. Now we'll talk more about Grant later on, certainly. Who else might there be who hates this plan? Maybe even someone lower than Grant. You think that's it? Lee's actually. Well, let me say this. We'll put a pin in Lee for right now. We'll chat about it later. What about the soldiers who are fighting and dying in the war to defeat this enemy? They say, Mr. President, you may not believe it. You may not think the southern states left, but we were fighting them. They were an entirely new nation, and we were the ones fighting and dying against them. Lincoln will propose what's called his proclamation of amnesty and Reconstruction. Now I need to ask first, what does amnesty mean? What is it? Excellent. It's forgiveness. Lincoln just wants the war over, and he wants the southern states back. He wants to forgive and move on. His plan will eventually gain the nickname of the 10% plan. Now, we'll talk more in just a little bit why it's called the 10% plan, but I do just want to show you this. I think this gives a nice little window into why Lincoln just wants the war over. Like I say, he might have suffered more than anyone during this war. He takes it very personally that the Union be protected. You can see in these photos how the war is going to take its toll on him. Here's him running in the election of 1860. Here's him right before he takes office. In 4 years of civil war, he goes from this to this. You can see him age as the life is simply sucked from him. His wife will say he didn't smile in 4 years. He wants the war over. His very lenient plan shows this, where Lincoln proposes as soon as 10% of the population of those southern states simply swears allegiance to the Union. As soon as 1 out of 10 Southerners in that state just swear allegiance to the Union, all is forgiven. No harm, no foul, just come back to the Union. Now, Lincoln's even going to put some cherries on top of this. When Lincoln says as soon as 10% of your state swear allegiance to the Union, you're back in, and you get all the spoils of Reconstruction. You get, literally, billions and billions of dollars to rebuild, all funded by the federal government. Now, I have to ask, because I can't believe someone will get this wrong, but I need to ask, who finances the federal government? Where do they get their money? Taxes. You have Union states paying billions of dollars to rebuild their enemy. Do we see a potential problem here? Lincoln also says as soon as 10% of your state's population just swears allegiance to the Union, you get to have your official state government recognized. They're back in business. You get your seats back in Congress. Remember, we were talking before about how the South really symbolically secedes when we see these Southern senators all stand up and leave their seats behind. Lincoln says as soon as 10% of your people swear allegiance to the Union, those same senators who left the Union get their seats back. Yes, yes, it's time to rebuild. Now, I should say this too, it's going to take a long time to get This is just plan A right here. Now, when these senators are told, you get your seats back, there's a group of people who take this as a personal affront. We were talking before when we first began the Civil War, these senators that left, all of them belong to one political party. What party did these Southern senators belong to? They were Democrats. When they leave, the Republicans are basically left with almost entire control of the Congress. Now here we have Lincoln saying, we're going to welcome all these Southern Democrats back. The group called the Radical Republicans will say, Mr. President, with all due respect, not so fast. You don't get to approve treaties. We do. Thaddeus Stevens will become the leader of this group in Congress, and he tells his sitting Republican presidents, we'll see what happens to your plan. When I see you next time, we're going to take a look at what happens to Lincoln and his plan.